On the road out of the city, we were stopped and searched. They took our phones. Men were separated from the women so they could kill us. We ran, but they shot some of us.
Evidence shows much of the killing occurred here outside the main hospital in Geneina. Then, fleeing civilians were ambushed again in Wadi Kaja. Satellite images show the river, which is usually shallow enough for cars to cross, had water running high that day. Scores struggled in the water, some shot as they drowned. Survivors say they heard gunfire from all directions.
I saw 17 kids who were shot dead, then thrown into the water. This was one of the most surreal scenes I've witnessed.
Even as they fled Geneina for Adre, across the border in Chad, our evidence shows men, women, and children were shot as they fled.
Yesterday, I was reading about this event that took place in Sudan. I mean, we're still talking about Ukraine, but there's not a whole lot of attention being paid to Sudan because there's been a war going on there for months between the government and the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, and it is just demonic what's been going on. It's just pure evil what's been happening there. The RSF, they are an extremely violent, murderous, genocidal, paramilitary organization. They originally were known as the Janjaweed, and they worked for the despotic regime of Omar al-Bashir, and their job was to squash any sort of rebellion in the Darfur region and also in South Sudan. That's the reason why South Sudan split from North Sudan, because the people there were tired of being butchered by the Afro-Semitic government of Sudan, of Khartoum. And so the government formed this paramilitary organization called the Janjaweed, and now they are known as the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. They committed genocide in Darfur, and they recently conducted a very large and systematic massacre of people who are non-Arab. So in Africa, you have people who are cold Arabs. Even though they may not really look Arab, they are Afro-Semites. These are people who are mixed between, they're mixed with black and Arab. So that's why, I call them Afro-Semites. And the Afro-Semites are racist against people who have very little or no Arab blood. They consider themselves superior. It's just racism. That's what this is. It's racism, even though the Afro-Arabs, they look pretty black if you look at them, right? Yes, they do have some differences in their features, but they look very African, okay? But they're racist against people who are non-Arab, and I say that with air quotes. And they did a horrific massacre of non-Arabs recently outside of a city called Geneina. And the people in Geneina, they were trying to escape the RSF. Geneina is a city in the region of West Darfur, and the RSF captured the governor of West Darfur, mutilated him, and murdered him. And after murdering the governor of West Darfur, the people of that city realized that they needed to flee, so they began to flee. And as they were fleeing, they were overtaken by the RSF. And the RSF, they're very cruel, they're sadists, these people, and they would tell the people to run so that as they are running, they can do target practice on them. So, for example, they took an 8-year-old boy and they told him to run, and as he was running, they shot him in the head. They took a whole bunch of women, about 112 or so women, half of whom were pregnant, and told them to run. And they opened fire on them. The people who managed to escape, they managed to get across the Chadian border and take refuge in a hospital ran by a charity. I believe the charity is headquartered in France. It's called Doctors Without Borders. And this charity has been helping the people who fled from Al Junaina, and so the survivors have been telling their stories. So we have many eyewitness accounts, and they say that you could see. I mean, when you went to the site of the massacre, you could see, or I should say, sites, because it was a very large massacre. But you could see just the streets strewn with bodies. It reminds me of what happened back in Lebanon in the 1980s with the Sabra and Shatila massacres. And you could see photographs from the Sabra and Shatila massacres in which the Lebanese nationalist fascists murdered Palestinian refugees, and they murdered thousands of them. And you could see photos from Lebanon from the 1980s of the streets just covered in bodies. And you see similar stuff coming from the area of Al Junaina. Humanitarian workers who are in charge of counting the bodies said that the last time they counted the corpses from this massacre, they found 884 bodies. And then they resumed counting, and they found even more. So we can say that at least over 1,000 people have been butchered in this massacre. I mean, I'm just imagining pregnant women being shot. I'm just imagining an 8-year-old being shot in the head. I'm just imagining people being butchered just so heartlessly. And these doctors from Doctors Without Borders helping people, and it's just it's very heartbreaking. You know, it's very heartbreaking, and it really makes you look at your own life, because a lot of the times, you know, we're complaining, we're like, oh, life sucks and I'm lonely or whatever, and then you look at Al Junaina, you look at what's happening in Sudan, you're like, well, yeah, our life is pretty good. Our life is pretty good. But you look at this story, and it's just heartbreaking, and it really shows the evil of these people, just pure evil. And I'm just imagining just streets covered in bodies, and it's just, it's horrific, guys. It really is. Anyway, you can look this up. Look up massacre in Sudan. You can look up Al Junaina, and you'll see there are a lot of media outlets talking about this. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.